Plenty of royal news from the past week. Covering it for us, as always, is royal expert Patricia Treble. Patricia, welcome back. All right, last week we got some very strong statements on behalf of the King and Queen regarding the Israel-Hamas conflict, but also from Will and Kate.
Yep. I've been reading their comments and their statements for a very long time, and I'm going to be honest, these are probably the strongest that I've ever heard. The King was adamant when he talked about the barbaric acts of Hamas. He met with the chief rabbi of Britain, talked to the King of Jordan, and the President of Israel. So very much head of state role, but very close to the Jewish community. What was interesting was, as you mentioned, the Will and Kate, because they're stepping more and more into their roles as heir. And so they issued a statement talking about how they utterly condemn the horrors of the Hamas attacks. Incredibly strong statements, but very much what you expect from them as, in their new roles.
Mm-hmm. All right. Meanwhile, speaking of William and Kate, they had a pretty busy weekend. They were both, I want to get this right, at the Rugby World Cup in France, but attended separately, Patricia, and that's because there's a real serious rugby rivalry in this household?
Now, they are famously competitive, those two, famously. But this was very much work. So on Saturday, we had William. He is the patron of the Welsh Rugby Union, so he was there. He brought George to watch Wales play in France. And then the next day, it was England's turn, and Kate is the patron of the English Rugby Football Union. I always have to get that name right. And so she was there. Now, here's the problem. England won, Wales lost. So England advances to the semifinals. Now, is this the sort of family where you switch your loyalties, right? If your team gets knocked out, do you all of a sudden become now an England fan? We will see. So, yeah, there'll definitely be more rugby in our future.
I want to see Kate cheering from the stands. I wonder if it's like Pretty Woman-esque, with Julia Roberts.
She was starting to get into it. So
okay. Let's switch gears to Harry and Meghan. The last time we saw them, we saw them in New York for World Mental Health Day, but then they've been quite low-key since then. There's been photos coming from the Caribbean.
Yeah, so this is something that, and I'm going to be honest, I think it's a good learning moment. So when I first saw this photo, it was of them, it was in the Daily Mail, and it was on them in the Caribbean. I must say, I stopped and I thought for a second, because this is the era of fakes and manipulations. And this is a classic one for me, because it was taken from the back, from a distance, and there's nobody around. And so I'm going to be honest, it looked very much like Harry and Meghan, but I kind of pause now when I see photos like that, and I kind of wait, and I'm waiting for a reaction, And we got nothing. They would have pushed back instantly if it was wrong, because this is the sort of photo. They're on an incredibly luxurious island. This is one where billionaires go to avoid millionaires, and it reinforces a narrative of them with a very expensive lifestyle. So whenever I see something like that, I take a pause before, I start reacting in any way.
And that's good advice these days, right? Because you just never know.
Never know.
Particularly with AI becoming more and more prevalent.
Well, there was something about Tom Hanks, like there's somebody completely faked him, and I'm thinking, there's so much out there.
So they are in the Caribbean.
They were in the Caribbean,
They were, but we just don't know if that photo.
We're not 100% sure that, I'm going to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. The fact that we've had no pushback, I think, leads credence to the fact it's real.
Oh, okay.
But we just don't know. And this is one of those things where I'm always a little hesitant.
It is a quiet street.
But again, it's an island, I'm sorry, where billionaires go to avoid millionaires.
It is.
There are very few people about.
Okay, no, that's
exactly.
That's a pretty exclusive island.
That is exclusive.
So. Okay, I also want to talk about the Hungarian-Canadian doctor and author who actually led that live stream with Harry when his book, his memoir, Spare, came out, because he is now out saying that he has some regrets over that. Yeah,
so cast your mind back when Harry was, doing all the press tour. He and Dr. Gabor Mate did a pay-per-view. And what he says now is that he regrets it, and a few things. First of all, the fact that the actual cost of the live stream was not expensive, but you had to buy Harry's book. And he regrets that because he says most of the people who saw it already had a copy, so they had to buy a second copy. And the other thing is that he and Harry really wanted it. It was such a good conversation about childhood and trauma. They wanted to put it online, but they were told no, because of course it's pay-per-view. And the other thing is, and this is kind of a sign of our times, he was completely unprepared for the amount of attention and the amount of criticism and pushback he got for doing the interview. Because, of course, there was so much controversy about the book, and he just got subsumed in all of that.
Okay. Before we run out of time, also the countdown. The countdown not only to commercial break, but the countdown to Kenya is on.
Yep. So this is the 4-day tour. The King and Queen are going state visit to Kenya. We've been waiting for this, and there's a lot of symbolism because it is the King's first trip to a Commonwealth nation, and Kenya is, of course, where the late Queen was when she became monarch in 1952. So it's going to be a huge trip. This is going to really set the tone for all future Commonwealth visits. It's going to be a listen and learn. They're going to be talking about very dark aspects of British colonial rule, including the first years of the Queen's reign. So not shying away from dark topics.
Okay.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. By the way, that tour gets underway at the end of the month.
End of the month.
31st?
31st of October to November 3rd.
All right.
Are you going?
Yeah, I've actually got it in my calendar. And then I'm going to the island where billionaires avoid millionaires.
Of course you are.
Patricia, thank you.
You're welcome.